commemoration of the death of Saint Jerome, and also in such a wonderful venue as the city of Ljubljana. Then, having done that, I wanted to start this paper by highlighting, in the specific context of missionary theory and practice, the lack of attention the presentation and uses of Greco-Latin and patristic authors have received so far in the critical literature. Despite both medieval and early modern missionary activity are very attractive subjects and are currently gathering lots of scholars to discuss them, not many devote their efforts to elucidate which role developed the quotations and mentions of classical authors in the evangelizing rhetoric. From a superficial perspective, one could say they simply acted as authoritates in the discourses where they appeared, but, as we shall see, in addition to that, they accomplished varying roles depending on the context, always contributing to build the image of the traditio Christians relied on in sharp contrast with the difficulties the otherness entail. Today then, I will focus my scope in the role Jerome played in two of the most important early modern missionary treatises. The Procuranda in Salute, printed in 1588 by the Jesuit José da Costa, and the Procuranda Salute Gentium, printed in 1615 by the Discalced Catholic Thomas de Jesús. You may have noticed certain reminiscence between both names, and it is simply because the second is modeled after the first. They both, in very different ways, sketch an system theory of missions that was lacking at the time and were considered reference manuals for missionaries in South America and to the Congregatio Propaganda Fide, respectively. José da Costa's work was profusely used as an in-depth guide to the apostolic duty in the missionary schools of Peru, while Thomas de Jesús was a prescriptive reading in the syllabus of the recently founded congregation. Before going on, I think it might be useful justifying their importance as valuable educational texts at the time. On the one hand, the Procuranda in Salute was the outcome of the project José da Costa had to understand how the local Indians were supposed to be dealt with and properly converted while maintaining a respectful proposal for their customs. The Spanish Jesuit composed an exceptional treatise covering a large number of topics. Many of them were first-hand witnesses of the labors he conducted during his years being one of the main Christian authorities in Peru. His work then described from an empirical point of view the troubles one had to endure to evangelize the Indians and offers very pragmatic as well as theologically consistent answers to relevant questions at the time, such as if a forced conversion is to be sought. On the other hand, the Procuranda Salute Gentium was conceived under the aegis of the Papal Curia, and like José da Costa's, this work is a compilation of a varied number of sources, being the result of a theoretical approach to the missions question. In it, however, strategies and methods of conversion can also be found in great numbers, offering a systematized account of the nascent mission science, of which it is considered one of the founding works. Besides, if one put together at the time both treatises, something I think no one did at that time, the importance and the range of their evangelization projects covered virtually every corner of the known world, so that every population was to be saved according to the strategies offered there. What were then the uses of Jerome conveyed in both texts? With respect to the Procuranda in Salute, we can rely on the modern edition coordinated by Hieronymus and other scholars, published in 1984. Although Hieronymus considers both direct and indirect mentions of the saint in his edition of José da Costa's work, I will only be considering those explicitly ascribing something to Jerome. In his count, a total of 9 mentions are found in the Procuranda in Salute. 7 if 2 secondary references are described. From these, only one is to be characterized exclusively as an authoritas using the text. When speaking about the noteworthy problem drunkenness caused to the Indians, Acosta introduces the description provided by Pliny the Younger of the fabrication of fermented drinks common to all Western people, to which he adds in the information that Jerome states that every kind of these dreams is designated by the Jews with the same name, Sire. This, one can easily see, is a use of the words of Jerome that hardly adds anything relevant to the argument, but instead its only function seems to be an embellishment of the rhetoric with a knowledge display very usual at the time. Differing is the case of the only quotation included by Acosta in his account. The author, following the manner of the time, devotes an entire book, the fourth, to describe the perfect minister of God, to whom is to be entrusted the cura animalum of these new servants of the Lord. He states that perfection is to be expected from him and deprecates the attitudes many in first South America evangelizing style. Also, he proposes in this same book an exemplum vitae modeled after many passages of the Bible to such an extent that he finally starts to quote epistles literally, using them not to confirm the authority of his recommendation, but instead to complete it, leaving all the relevant advice to the very words of Paul, without an exegetical commentary after them. Jerome, at this point, acts as a completion of the words of moral decency and excellence found in the epistles to Timotheus and Titus. And now I'm quoting Acosta quoting Jerome. Quid de te probabilitas fin hypotest, ne fin dato ante de vita. The literal quote of the epistle to Nepotianus appears here to open the text the perspective of gossip or bad reputation. They are to be prevented even before coming up, and the words of Jerome are the only discussion made about it, not being developed neither before nor afterwards in the text. Albeit being presented as an authority, this book represents also an argument by itself, since no other mention is made, so it is to be understood as the expression of the critical point of view of Acosta, but exploiting, in his case, the dictum of the saint of Stephen. Finally, most of the mentions are concentrated in the first book of the De Procuranda Indorum Salute. These are introduced either preceded or followed by classical Christian authorities such as John Chrysostomus, Hildebrandus, or Gregory the Great. Such a presentation of the authors, the ideas conveyed by them, and even the formulation are clear characteristic of an auctoritatis speech, since all the names cited act as a mere support for the argument they immediately follow. Nevertheless, this apparent simplicity mentioned in Jerome, among others, hides a programmatic device, the rhetoric of José da Costa Concilios, with an intention-pated system. One does know, for example, the Inquisition in stating Jerome said something. Moreover, the first book of the treatise is the one with more biblical patristic mentions through its pages, and the same is one of the most cited authors in it. Assuming the intention of the Jesuit Acosta of building a Christian framework for the question of the convenience of evangelizing the Indians, carried out in the most obvious way in this first book, Jerome turns out to be an easy point of reference upon which the author refers to settle down some crucial arguments of his New World concern. In the case of the Procuranda Salute New Gentium, I'll be using the 1613 edition, since we still lack a complete modern critical edition of the text. On account of the impressive extension of the work, more than 1,000 pages, I will focus my attention only in the first and the ninth book of the mentions on Jerome de Quinte. Also, I must make another remark because of the compilatory nature of the work. Even if the author states in the prefatio that he will cite all the authors quoted, the truth is it seldom does so. Hence, it wouldn't be surprising, indeed it is to be expected, if a great number of the passages where Jerome appears are themselves extractions from other treatises, put together by Thomas de Mesmer. This fact shouldn't relieve the importance of its testimony. On the contrary, it should increase it, because all the extant mentions are resulting from previous selection carried out by the author and are then considered relevant. The first book, then, is dedicated to serve as a theoretical basis to a consistent missional ideal that justified the centralization of the apostolic duty in a congregation the Pope Paul V was set to create. This means that a significant part of this book intends to trace back the evangelization to Jesus' teachings and their successors, especially Paul, as we have seen before with Acosta. To some extent, the single mention of Jerome found in this book is to be equated with those found in the first book of Acoustic World. They both try to convey a global rich ideal. The strategy, even if similar, is not exactly the same. Here Tomás de Jesus spares Jerome, quoting extensively his epistles to Gabentius and to Rusticus, with John Chrysostomos, but also with Gregory the Great, Augustine of Hippo, and Bernard of Clairvaux, in a sort of catena autoritatum devoted to missions. Unlike Acosta, the Carmelite does not bestow special relevance to Jerome. On the contrary, his selected quotes seemed only of cumulative interest in stating the importance of the missionary ideal. A very different approach is found in the ninth book, dedicated to comforting the Jews. Tomás de Jesus, because of the compilatory character of his work, often intersperses his own arguments with literal quotations of some authors. This is the case in the first mention of Jerome in the ninth book. Following a paragraph where the iniquity of the Jews is discussed, the author inserts a fragment of the Epistle to Dardanus, where the saint admonishes on the voluntary blindness of the Jews in a better way Tomás de Jesus himself could have done. The fragment is not then isolated in the polemical discourse, but instead it fits adequately with an ongoing argument afterwards. Moreover, Tomás de Jesus in this same book includes a list of disputationes carrying a large tradition in Jewish-Christian polemics. Those deal mainly with the Messianic tradition. Since the only objective of the author is to prove Christ to be the Messiah Old Testament prophecies talk about, he basically orders the oracles in a way that the life of Christ can be explained to them. So, first we find the Annunciation, then the Davidic lineage, and so on. Every oracle is quoted from the Bible, and its relation to the episodes of the New Testament becomes evident by the means of the exegetical readings formulated by fathers of the Church and other notable churchmen. Most of the exegetical references include the name of Jerome, but not in the expected auctoritas manner, but in an almost bibliographical way. Texts where Jerome has said so and rejects to quote them as if it were a handbook. Hence, the Saint of Triton is used several times to confirm the Christian reading of the prophecies of Isaiah, or Numbers, among others, being one of the most recurring interpreters of the Bible cited, together with Augustine and John Chrysostomos. In a single occasion, in the Climatercia Nota, seeking to read in the Old Testament piety showed by Christ toward the sinners, Jerome is even referenced as the only commentator that has interpreted a passage of Micah 4 in this manner. Tomás de Jesus cites also Benito Arias Montano, but he only states he followed Jerome in reading this passage, without even giving an indication about where to find the Spanish scholar's interpretation. Thus, the Vulgate translator is the only father of the Church to whom the author of the treatise seems to bestow enough authority as to be presented as a single support of a particular reading. Even Chrysostomos, who is the only capable of rivaling him, needs the help of the New Testament when interpreting all prophecies. This should give us an image of the great consideration the Saint of Triton still held as a biblical commentator at the time. However, it is safe to say, in all this list of names, Jerome is just another name that helps to fulfill the eagerness for exhaustiveness Tomás de Jesus seems to show. Consequently, the resulting text is a perfect shortcut for the standard reader, a preacher that hadn't completed his training yet. It made possible a quick consultation without demeaning the content and allusions of the resulting sermon or preaching. Even in the event of a controversial confrontation, the Christian could use those references as a lecture guide and, whenever possible, consult them in order to perfect his polemical arguments. Keeping this in mind, I consider the accuracy of patristics references not only a material at the disposal of a missionary with very limited access to Christian authorities, but also an invitation to read them and follow their interpretations. Jerome, being again profusely cited, was then a very recommended author. To sum it up, it can be said that the heterogeneity of the first missionary works offers a complex image about how they presented Jerome in his works. We can find a simple mention to confer authority to the argument exposed, as often happened in medieval texts, but also extensive quotations that dealt with crucial questions in the discourse of the authors of the treatises, and even hints of how they intended to transpose a framework to others, be it the Christian tradition to the Indians, or the Christian theology to the Jews. Keeping that in mind, it is sure, from the evidence presented, that Jerome was still a great Christian figure in the mindset of early modern missionaries, and even if used in very different arguments, the implicit advice was the one José de Costa states in his treatise. Lege